Juan Santiago, also known as Juanchito with his family, was born around 1984, though various sources state that he was anywhere from 35 to 37 years old. He was from Massachusetts, and in 2020, he and his girlfriend, Christina Mock, moved from Chelsea, Massachusetts, to San Antonio, Texas. He's described as having been around 5'10" and 146 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. Some flyers describe him, though, as having been 5'6". Juan had a friend named Isaac that had had a job for him there, where it was stated that Christina went with Juan for this reason. Juan was to reach out to Isaac when he got to San Antonio. Mock may not or may have had family in San Antonio that was supposed to help set them up once getting to Texas. Juan was described as a kid-friendly guy that loved his family. His children knew that they were loved, and he was on good terms with his children's mother, Sarah Colmatch. Juan was also described as the type of person that would drink a little bit too much. It seems that Juan and Christina Mock were living in a hotel room in a Motel 6 on the 5500 block of Ritterman Road. On June 19th, sometimes also listed as June 20th, in 2020, Juan vanished from the Motel 6 after having made a 911 call. In the call, he is heard arguing with someone and asks the operator to stay on the phone while he ran. He stated that he was running for his life from an unknown person that was after him. He had only been in San Antonio for one day before this happened. On NamUs, it is stated that the date of his last contact was in June 22nd of 2020. When Sarah found out that Juan had gone missing, she traveled to San Antonio from Florida to look for him, of which Juan's girlfriend, Christina, went to help her. According to articles, Christina stated that Juan was suffering from alcohol withdrawal and had been experiencing hallucinations, proceeding to then run out of the hotel room. When Juan disappeared, his family stated that it was uncharacteristic of him to not contact his family. Later on, when Sarah had heard the phone call that Juan made to 911, she suspected that there was more to the story than what Christina had told her. Sarah is quoted as saying, "I felt betrayed. I wish she just told me the truth from the beginning. Because I would have had more to go on when I went out there. I would have been looking harder in the wooded areas for a body and not just a homeless man." Allegedly, Mock had told a close family member that Juan had been suffering from alcohol withdrawal on the train that I'm presuming that they took to San Antonio, before even getting to Texas. According to Mock, when Juan ran out of the hotel, he grabbed her wallet and phone. This prompted a call from Mock to Juan's family asking for $500. Juan's family refused, and Mock reached out multiple times afterward, asking for different amounts of money. She then called Juan's mother, who is described as having been, or is deaf-mute, asking for money, stating that Juan had been arrested and she needed it for bail. An aunt of Juan's walked in on the conversation, and she asked Mock what jail Juan was being held in, and then Christina freaked out, stating, I'm sorry, it's just a misunderstanding," and then hung up. Juan's family stated that they, really Sarah, received ransom text messages stating that the receiver was cartel and they were holding Juan hostage, and he was really sick and dying. If Juan's family didn't send $7,000, Juan would be killed. When his family went to the police about the text messages, they asked, "Are you sure that he isn't sending you those text messages?" Sarah had went to San Antonio and posted missing persons posters around town with her phone number and received the fake texts all from the same number. SAPD then asked Sarah if she wasn't sure that it wasn't Juan doing all of this. She notes that SAPD never took it seriously and were making jokes the entire time about Juan's case. It should also be noted, as stated by other people, that this common cartel's $7,000 sickness text is a common scam in San Antonio for some reason. SAPD joked that Juan was running from his girlfriend when listening to the audio of the 911 call. Juan's aunt, Davinci Santiago, stated in an interview with Jason Hebert that she had asked Mock if they had gone to the police to file a report. Mock stated that she tried to file a report with the San Antonio Police Department and that they told her that because she wasn't family, she couldn't file. Adelaide then called SAPD to try and file, and they initially told her that an official, a security guard, saw Juan, and because Juan was 35 years old, he wouldn't be considered a missing person. Apparently, the security guard also called 911. In the interview with Hebert, Sarah stated that she was told that unless the person is a child, elderly, or disabled, a missing persons report on that person cannot be filed. Juan's family then wanted a copy of the 911 call and then had to go through the bureaucratic process. They were told that they had to request the 911 call in writing, in which they did so, and they received it 2 weeks later. After Juan's disappearance, Mock returned to Massachusetts, went to the hospital, and then died. She checked herself into the Melrose Wakefield Hospital, having had suicidal thoughts, and wanted to get help. It's unknown how or why Christina passed away. She had been in her hospital room for 15 hours and was under suicide watch. Sarah Colmatch, the mother of Juan's children, stated, "She was the missing piece to the puzzle. She knew exactly what happened that day when Juan went missing. Unfortunately, we'll never get that piece anymore. We've had to accept that at this point." After Juan disappeared, Christina Mock listed on her Facebook that she was in a relationship. There are reports that supposedly she had already been talking to another man after Juan's disappearance. Foul play is suspected as a part of his disappearance even before his body was found. Juan was missing for 4 months before his body was found in October of 2020. In one article, it states that Juan's body was found on October 17th in John James Park. Apparently, a man that had been walking his dog near the park entrance reported what they thought were human remains. An article from Ken's 5 states that the remains were badly decomposed. Days after the discovery, the bones were determined to be human. Marilyn Rosa, which is Juan's aunt, reached out to the coroner that examined the remains, who stated that they fit the demographics for having been Juan. But interestingly, they believed his bones, or the bones, to have belonged to an older male. This may have been due to the advanced decomposition of the remains. A man by the name of Frank Trevino, who lives in San Antonio and volunteers to help search for missing people, got into contact with Juan's family through social media. Trevino went to the park that the remains were found and tried to find any sort of clue or material remains that may have belonged to Juan. One of the items that he had looked for was a diamond earring that Juan was known to wear, but Trevino left empty-handed. Different sources state that Santiago's remains were found in Fort Sam Houston, which is right next to the park that the remains were initially found. This may be a misconception since Fort Sam Houston has its own park which the Salado Creek runs through, as the Salado also runs through the John James Park. John James Park is technically owned by the city of San Antonio. In an article from Ken's 5 on January 1st, 2021, the remains were confirmed to have been Juan's. It is important to note that Juan's body was found relatively close to the motel. Despite the family asking for phone records and information, there was no help from SAPD in coming forth with any information with either Juan or Christina's phones. Allegedly, the Air Force of Special Investigations is working with several law enforcement agencies and the San Antonio Police Department on the case. According to Juan's family, the FBI is also involved. The integrity of Christina Mock's character is the most that comes into question. According to Juan's aunt Adelaide, Mock was not very well known with Juan's family and did not really participate in family events. There apparently hadn't been much conflict in the relationship between Juan and Mock, though at some point there was some sort of controversy about Christina claiming to have been pregnant, which was a false positive, of which Christina may or may not have had a tumor that may or may not have been removed. Christina was from a different city than Juan in Massachusetts, and Sarah stated that no one knew her. There's a story from Sarah that Christina Mock had stolen pills from a person in the past. An interview with Christina's sister stated that she was just as shocked about her sister's death as with Juan's. On Facebook, there's a group called Help Find Juan Santiago of Chelsea, Massachusetts. There's a post from Frank Trevino talking about the area that Juan's body was found. He states that the area that Juan was found on as federal land inaccessible to the public. The area that Juan's remains were found was in a heavily wooded area near the outer perimeter of the base, the only people having access to the area having been the groundspeople that work for Fort Sam's National Cemetery. While the cemetery is open to the public during business hours, there aren't any roads to access the remote location of the outskirts of the cemetery grounds. The nearest building to the area being a group of maintenance sheds 1,000 feet from west for maintenance vehicles. Holbrook Road is parallel to the creek, a public road that has access to Salado. In Trevino's posts, he states with confidence that Juan did not enter the park through Fort Sam Houston, but rather through Holbrook Road. It is important to note that this area is less than 5,000 feet from Motel 6 that Juan was staying at. In an interview, Sarah stated that she was disappointed in SAPD and Texas in general. She is right to feel that way, especially towards SAPD, since they were not helpful and would even give incorrect information at times. Earlier in this post or video, I wrote how she was told that a person of Juan's age wouldn't have been able to even been reported missing. I'm unsure why the family was even told this information when there are literally people of all ages and backgrounds reported missing in the state of Texas. According to the Texas Missing Person Act, as available on the Texas Department of Public Safety website, a missing person is defined as a person 18 years of age or older whose disappearance is possibly not voluntary. A missing person also includes a person of any age who is missing and is under proven physical or mental disability or is senile, or missing under circumstances indicating that the person's safety is in doubt, or unemancipated as defined by the laws of this state, or missing after a catastrophe. The difficult part is getting the local law enforcement to understand that a person went missing and for them to file the missing persons report. For some reason, SAPD did not take Juan's disappearance seriously, and even stated that an official or a security guard had seen Juan. Allegedly, an official may or may not have given Juan a ride, though this does not explain him still going missing for 4 months after the June date. Even still, through recordings of the 911 phone call, it appears more like Juan had been fighting with his girlfriend Christina, and he had been set up, and the people out to get him were trying to force him into a car. All Texas law enforcement agencies are to immediately enter the name of the missing person into the Texas Missing Persons Clearinghouse upon receiving a report of a missing adult or child, and the entries are to be automatically entered into the National Crime Information Center Missing Person File. From what it sounds to me, and this is just my personal opinion, it seems that Juan's family has grounds to sue the SAPD for negligence against Texas law standards. Even further, to disprove the erroneous information that Juan's family was told about filing the missing persons report, there are technically different alerts for various age groups. While anybody can be registered as a missing person, elderly, for example, would be categorized as a silver alert, and as with the rest of the country, children are listed with amber alerts. There's absolutely no reason a 35-year-old man could not be filed as a missing person. Even further, a person can easily look onto websites such as the Doe Network and Name Us and find files of people missing in the state of Texas from wildly different ages. Though my own personal opinion, Juan's family could have filed the paperwork for him to have been considered in danger missing or to file a clear alert before his remains were found. Of course, they are at the mercy, though, of the San Antonio Police Department, who seem to have refused to even done their job. It really feels like Juan's family was taken advantage of because they were from out of state. While this does not directly affect Juan's case, I personally feel like this is yet one more example, though, of the United States police system needing a revamp in requirements. While each state is different, it seems like the bar is set too low. In order for a person to join the police force in any area in Texas, they are supposed to have their TCOL certification that can usually be done at any community college. The problem with this, though, is that the TCOL classes are less than a year, usually between about a semester's worth of time to maybe 9 months. It takes longer for a person to get an associate's degree or even a bachelor's than it does to become a police officer. This is my own personal opinion, which I don't like to normally interject into cases like this, but I really do feel like police officers need more training before being hired for their job. This is a gross lack of misunderstanding and humility with officers, and it shows in Juan's case. They refuse to help his family. In the city of San Antonio, a person only needs to be over the age of 21 with a high school diploma or GED and a clean offense record to be considered a potential candidate. SAPD flaunts having one of the highest starting pays for cadets in the state of Texas with a base pay of $45,000 a year. Interestingly, in an article with KENS 5, Scott Hermes, a 27-year career officer, stated that the turnover is a regular thing for SAPD. In 2018, it was reported that an income of $58,504 was needed to live comfortably in the city, and the starting pay for cadet is less than that. In a 2017 article with Texas Public Radio, it was reported that San Antonio has one of the lowest officers per capita of any police department in the country. In October of 2016, there were 40 cadets in the Delta class, of which 23 graduated. Normally, the attrition rate is 13%, and at that point, it rose to over 40. In comparison to other major cities in Texas, where Dallas has 27 and Houston has 23 officers per 10,000 people, San Antonio has 15. Juan's case is not the only one of negligence in San Antonio Police Department. In 2016, there's the case of a San Antonio cop that fed a homeless man a feces sandwich. While the cop lost his job, he was later reinstated due to a local city code that prevents an officer from discipline for conduct that occurred more than 180 days before they are disciplined. This same officer also defecated in a female restroom in the downtown Bike Patrol office and refused to flush the toilet. Then he and another officer took some sort of brown substance and smeared it on the toilet seat, giving the appearance of feces. To me, this proves that the officers of San Antonio are severely lacking in education, judgment, and hiring protocol. It is extremely unfortunate that Juan was put into a situation where the people that are supposed to have helped him were useless from the start. It is implied, though not directly stated, that Christina must have been addicted to some sort of drugs. And it makes me wonder if perhaps she tried to get Juan onto something. I wonder if she set him up and the whole situation may have been some sort of drug deal gone wrong. There's not much that seems to have been said about this contention, and even further, according to many articles, she is quoted as having said that Juan was going through alcohol withdrawals. Interestingly, in the DSM-4, it states that symptoms of alcohol withdrawal from heavy and prolonged abuse include autonomic hyperactivity, which is usually sweating or a pulse greater than 100, increased hand tremors, insomnia, nausea or vomiting, transient visual, tactile, or auditory hallucinations, psychomotor, agitation, anxiety, and grand mal seizures. It should be noted, though, that when a person with alcohol withdrawal delirium is likely to have some sort of other clinical relevant general medical condition, such as liver failure, pneumonia, gastrointestinal bleeding, or hypoglycemia. Despite the reports from Mock that Juan had been suffering from hallucinations, it does not seem that he may have really been undergoing alcohol withdrawal. Even further, not a single family member has ever stated that he had any serious medical problems like those listed above. Even further, a person who would suffer from alcohol withdrawal would have had to have had alcohol abuse, which typically affects a person's family. And Juan's family stated multiple times that he loved his family so much and always kept in contact with them. I'm sure that many people have questions as to how his body ended up where it did, and how it went unnoticed for so long. If he went missing in June and skeletal remains weren't found until October, wouldn't anyone have smelled a decaying body in the Texas humidity? What's important to remember is that the skeletal remains were found near the Salado River. What I think may have happened, and this is complete conjecture, is that Juan was killed for some sort of potential drug deal gone wrong, and his body was dumped somewhere on that side of San Antonio. What people might not know, though, is that Salado Creek tends to flood when it rains enough in San Antonio. Even further, I've seen it for myself, that when the creek floods, it tends to get a load of trash flowing through it, literal garbage. There may have been a possibility that Juan's body was in the Salado for those 4 months. He might have been nipped at by animals, and then eventually the remains landed at John James Park. I do think that the people that killed him stripped him of his clothes that he was wearing when he started running in the 911 call. Considering how no piece of his clothing or his diamond earring was found, I can only assume that he had to have been stripped naked. People may have also had the question as to why Sarah initially thought she may have been looking for a homeless man at first instead of a body. San Antonio has a large homeless population, and you can drive around the city and see homeless camps in various places from under highways to behind Walmarts and people sleeping on the Riverwalk. There is a definite economic disparity in the city, especially among different races, and while San Antonio brings in new companies to build new stores, the jobs stay low wage and low paying. The price of housing keeps going up, while the availability to have a career gets lower. Colloquially, people from the area tend to see San Antonio as a place to get call center or MIC jobs, whereas the other big cities such as Austin or Houston provide more room for people to have careers. Through all of that, I do not have much more to provide about the scenario. I do look at the situation with an Occam's razor point of view, meaning that the simplest explanation is usually the right one. Personally, I think that Christina Mock had some type of drug addiction. I think that she knew people in San Antonio, whether Juan knew about it or not. I think that the reason for the 911 call must have been from a drug deal that she must have organized and it started to go south, or perhaps she purposely tried to get Juan robbed. I believe that Mock knew the real story, the real location of Juan, and who killed him. She must have had an extreme amount of guilt on her conscience once she saw the family outcry and search for him. It's interesting to me that she thought about suicide, was on suicide watch not long before she died. In some sort of way, I think that she must have killed herself before ending up in the hospital. It's possible she may have ingested something that later would have killed her when she was in there. Unfortunately, we may never know the real story and the truth as to what happened to Juan. Since this story is so new, there's no Find a Grave page yet for Mock or Santiago. The news was only confirmed on January 2nd, 2021, and at the time of this video, Juan's remains are still in the process of going back to his family. May he rest in peace.